All right, the meeting of the Pittsylvania County Service Authority regular meeting will come to order, please. Roll call, please.
Mr. Davis.
Present.
Mr. Dudley.
Present.
Mr. Farmer.
Here.
Mr. Ingram.
Here.
Mr. Scarce.
Here.
Mr. Warren.
Here.
Are there any revisions or additions to the agenda?
No, sir.
Hearing none. Motion for approval of the agenda, please.
I make a motion, we approve agenda as presented.
Second.
All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Consent agenda, please. Motion.
I make a motion, we approve the consent agenda, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. All right. Minutes, approval of the previous minutes, December 15th.
When we did the consent agenda approval, we just automatically do that.
Oh,
So you
all
can
right.
skip to number 6 to see if anybody signed up here.
We don't have anyone signed up to speak.
All right, okay, thank you. All right, hearing of the citizens. Mr. Attorney, would you like to?
No one has signed up, so you can dispense with reading that paragraph.
All right. Presentations, all right. Mr. Adcock.
Yes, sir. As you recall from the December meeting, the PCSA was awarded just under $14,000 in the COVID-19 Municipal Utility Relief Program, and I just wanted to give you an update on how that has progressed. We did a mailer to the accounts identified that were in arrears that may be recipients of this grant monies. We also did phone calls and emails. So to date, we have received about 23 applications that were PCSA accounts. We actually received about the same number that were accounts from City of Danville, Appalachian Power, everywhere. Just we notified them that this was just for PCSA customers only. So the 23 that we've identified amounts to about $6,617. So we've expended about half of that allocated amount. And we have been, the initial deadline was the end of January, but we have been extended like the other COVID-19 programs. So we will continue to make some outreach to the customers and to see if we can get them to sign up for that. Any questions on that? All right, I think we can move on to, if there's no questions, we can move on to
All right,
to
sir.
B.
Item B.
As you recall, we were in the process of a master water and wastewater plan preparation, and one of the items that we moved to the front, task items for that, was developing a utility extension policy. And our consulting engineer is here today to give you an update of how that has been progressing, some things that we have learned in that process, and to hopefully get some feedback from the board on how we want to shape this policy. So Mr. Charles Archer with Freeze and Nichols is here to go over that with you. That's the audit copy.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. And I'm Charles Archer, and I appreciate the opportunity to be back with you. I think I was here in November of last year. And as Chris said, we're working on the water wastewater master plan with your staff for the county, for your utility system. And one of the first tasks was to look at your current utility extension policy. And as we begin to peel back the layers of this onion, I think we're creating more questions maybe than we're answering. So we wanted the purpose of this presentation today is to get some of your feedback and guidance. And I know you're just seeing and hearing some of these questions I'm going to ask you for the first time, so don't feel like you have to give guidance today. You can give us that at a later date, but we do need to get some input from you. But just real quickly, we are on schedule, although the project is only about 2.5 months old. We're still collecting and organizing the data from the county for the master plan, and we're actually beginning the development of the forecasting tool and obviously working on the extension policy part of that. So there are two parts of the extension policy we'd like to bring to your attention today to get your feedback on. One is how you deal with proposed new development. And the second part of that is how do you deal with extending the county's utilities to existing development, essentially a petition process. I'm going to have some examples that have created some of the questions that we'd like to get your guidance on, and I'll show those on the screen with you. Next slide, please. So the first part of this is for the policy is for new private development. And essentially the way the county's existing policy is, which is pretty typical with any utility system you'll find for most local governments, is that new private developments have to pay to extend the county's water and wastewater system to serve their development if that's what they want, if they want to have those services there. And it has to develop plans, submit them to the county for approval, and they build it to county specifications. And when it's finished, they turn it over to the county to maintain and operate. So it's just the growth of your system. So that's the first piece of that. Next slide. So this is where it begins to create questions for us. So this is a scenario taken from here in Pittsylvania County. On the screen, you see that blue line, which is US Highway 29, but the blue line also represents where you have an existing water line. And you'll see that kind of the orange shaded area to the top right-hand corner of the slide. It says proposed new development. Let's just, for this example, is where there's someone wanting to develop that area, build a subdivision there, and they want to provide county water to their development. They would be required to extend the water line, that purple line that you see going through the purple area. I think this is Spring Garden Road. So they'd have to go from Highway 29 down Spring Garden Road to get to their development. That's the way the county's policy is written today. Some of the questions that this has created for us is how to deal with what's in the purple area. Essentially, where the developer would be paying for the water line to the potential benefit for other properties that they don't get the benefit of from their development. So next slide. So these are some of the questions that we'd like to pose for you all to get some direction from you if you could. And the first is, would the county want to participate financially as an incentive to create development? Essentially, shorthand is, would you want to put some of the county's money, the county's utility system money, into assisting private developers to expand your system and create development in the county? The second is, when you go back to that example, that purple shaded area, under this scenario, the developer's paying to extend the water line through the purple area to his development. And so that's going to create quite a bit of, road frontage with access to the county's water system, where those property owners didn't have to pay anything for that water line. The developer paid for it all. So one of the questions is, would the county want to charge a fee over and above your traditional tap fee for those properties that may want to make a connection to the county's water system there? We've polled a number of different counties' utility systems, and it's done a lot of different ways. Some do and some don't. Some of the arguments to think about this is that if you charge a fee and you're not participating financially in this, the landowner's going to say, well, why is the county charging a fee? You don't have any skin in the game. So you're just making money off of us for what a developer paid to do. The counter to that is that that's true, that the county may not have had any money in the creation of that line in front of their property, but after it's built, it's yours to maintain forever. And that doesn't include the infrastructure that's in front of that line, the water production, water treatment, the pumping to get the water up through that purple line. So there is an expense to the county that you're going to have by maintaining these lines going forward. And then the third question is, which is pretty traditional in most places, right now under that scenario, if that development needed just a 6-inch water line, but the county's water model says you really need an 8-inch there, right now the county would pay to upsize the cost of that difference between the 6-inch and the 8-inch. Do you want to continue to do that? Essentially become a partner with the developer, to share to get the proper size water line for the long run for the county. Any questions or suggestions, or do you understand the scenarios and the questions that we posed? Any suggestions you want to give us today?
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Oh, yes, I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Chairman. Do we have the ability for a developer to be incentivized by being reimbursed for the people that come on the line later that's in the purple area?
Great question. That's one that we've talked about. And you can do that. Some of the questions that you may have, is the staff may have, is you've got to have an accounting system to be able to track it. I'll give an example. I talked to another utility system last week about how they handled it. And what they would do is that under that purple area, that purple line, for 5 years after it's finished, they would charge the adjacent property owners an additional $500 if they wanted a tap above the tap fee. And then they would give that $500 back to the developer. They discontinued that policy for 2 reasons. One is it was really hard to keep up. When you've got multiple of these going on all over the county, you've got to have the accounting system in place to be able to track it. And the second was that they said many of their developments were done by limited liability corporations. So after they build the subdivision, sell all the lots, they dissolve the LLC. So there's no longer that legal entity to give the money back to that the county had the agreement with. That created, so they stopped doing it. But you can do that. There's no right or wrong answer here, but it's just a matter of having the systems in place to track everything and manage it.
Well, the reason I asked the question, gentlemen, is in particular with Bury Hill, there's going to be a need once we have that big employer there for some residential development. Well, the infrastructure costs to do those developments can be really cost prohibitive, but if they knew they had some kind of incentive to recoup some of that, I think could be advantageous up around that area. So, we might want to at least look into it, Mr. Smithman.
Yes, sir. Any other questions, comments, suggestions?
Mr. Chairman,
Sir, Mr. Davis?
to me personally, this is a little bit above my pay grade. And you already gave a good diatribe that I do appreciate. But however, we're going for a retreat at the end of this month. And if it's my personal opinion, everybody, I'm speaking just for myself. I would like a backdrop of what other counties have done that you've already ascertained, okay, if you will. Put that on there. I would like a nice layout, so that way I can look at this and get an idea, and we could possibly put it on the agenda and have it discussed at our retreat, because this is going to take just more than to me, a quick decision tonight, because it's more involved, it's too involved. For me, it is for me. I don't have to, I got to watch that before I say that. So, anyway, I'm at the back of the class, but I'm watching everything. I need more material to prepare for this, Mr. Smitherman. I appreciate it, but that's me personally. I'm just speaking for me personally. Thank you, though. I mean, I appreciate it, but it's over my head. I don't have an engineering degree yet.
Well, thank you, Mr. Davis. At the end of this, you're going to hear a suggestion from us, because this, to maybe look at this a little bit different way, but I wanted to try to lay out the pieces before I get to the kind of the
I
end
would
question.
appreciate that. I would appreciate your suggestion.
Okay.
Definitely as well.
Because there's so many situations that are different. It's hard to deal with it in a piecemeal manner. And so
Okay,
it's-
going back, if you don't mind, real hurriedly, Mr. Chairman. His question he asked you, which you commented was a good question. How would you deal with that?
Well, there are different ways to do that. So there's a proposed development, and they may or may not have, well, it's going to be expensive to extend the infrastructure to serve the development. Well, some of the other systems we've talked to, that they have had a fund, essentially, where, and a formula where they will participate, and it's typically based upon the payback. When you look at, you're going to add, just to keep the math simple, if you're going to add 100 lots, and you're going to have 100 new accounts on your water system, that over a certain amount of time, that's going to generate revenue that you would not have had ordinarily. So it becomes part of your rates, that's built
Okay.
into your rates,
Yeah, okay.
that comes in to subsidize that. So you create a fund to do that, and a policy to go along with that fund, when you should and shouldn't use it with certain developments.
Okay, you finally got me on board, right? You got me hooked in there. Mr. Adcock, thank you. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Any other comments about this scenario? All right, next slide, please. All right, so the other half, key half of this policy is for how do you deal with existing development? The other was new private development. This is where you've got existing homes, existing subdivided property that may not be adjacent to your system today, but they want to have it extended for whatever reason. They could be having wells going dry, wells going bad, or they're just ready to improve water quality, whatever it might be. The county has a policy in place today that says that if 51% of the owners in a certain area get together and they petition, that the county will extend it, and the line, they have to pay it back over a defined period of time. And that's pretty standard too, across most utilities, to have a petition process. Sometimes the petition is, the percentages change or different, but most places are 50% plus one, essentially. So next slide, please. So this is a similar scenario. Again, the existing development is that orange hash area that you see to the far right of the slide. And your water line, if you see on the far left, is that blue line that's also in Highway 29. But to get to serve that development, they would have to extend it, I think that's Malmaison Road. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Mount Mason, Mount Mason?
Mount Mason?
Road. Mount Mason, that's in my area.
Okay. They would have to extend it from Highway 29 down that road to serve the development, passing all of that adjacent property in purple. So we end up creating similar questions that we had for the other scenario. So essentially, the folks that are under your current policy, there are 45 parcels in that orange area. So 23 of those would have to sign a petition to have your water line extended in there. And typically how that works is you have more of what I call a two-step process, a pre-petition. If I'm the property owner, I don't want to legally commit to it till I know how much it's going to cost me. So you submit a pre-petition The county wants to make sure you got enough people interested before you go spend time figuring out how much it's going to cost. But once they meet that requirement of the pre-petition, they submit it to the county. So the county looks at it, it's going to cost, let's just use $100,000. Again, keep the math simple for my simple mind, to extend from Highway 29 to their development. So that's 23 property owners that are committing to pay $100,000 over a certain period of time to the county. And essentially, the county fronts the money, and they pay you back over time. So if you go to the next slide, some of the questions that we had from this is, the first one to me is kind of a no-brainer, but I want to make sure that the folks that petition, should be a legally binding petition, so they should connect. But I want to get that affirmation from you guys, that's what you'd want to continue to do. To me, if they're interested and they see it's going to cost me $4,500, yes, I'm willing to pay that back over whatever period of time to the county. The second question gets into similar with the new development is, does the county want to participate financially in this utility extension? Again, you're going past all that purple area that these folks in the existing subdivision, those 45 lots, they're having to pay for. So it's going to probably run the cost up significantly for those folks, more than it ordinarily would be. So would the county want to participate financially? And I'll come back to that in just a moment. And then we go back to the same question we had on number 3 here that we had with the other scenarios. These folks petition, the county builds a water line, and they pay for it through the purple area. When the people that own property in the purple area decide they want to connect to the water system, should the county charge some fee over and above your traditional tap fee for them to have access to that, to help recover again, that cost you're maintaining that line and over a period of time, so that you can make the argument that the county should. And again, just like a developer, if you don't have any financial skin in the game in that line, the property owner will say, just like in the other scenario, well, the county didn't pay for anything, so why should we have to pay an additional fee? And then the fourth question is, which is in your existing policy today. If you go back to that previous slide, in that orange area where there are 45 parcels, again, to trigger your policy, 23 would have to petition. If there happens to be someone in that neighborhood where the lines were being extended that did not sign the petition but has a bad well that's certified by your health department, under your current policy, they're required to connect for public health reasons. And so the question is, would you want to continue to have that in your policy? Some of the things that, some of the big picture questions that makes this complicated is how to deal with these purple areas. Does the county want, and one option is for the county to create a fund that would allow you to financially participate, so you don't have to deal with all these one-off situations and potentially create a precedent that may or may not be good for the long term for the county. But if you have a policy in place and a fund where you can participate, and it's clear when that fund is triggered and when the county will participate financially, then it happens according to policy and not something very subjective. It's process. And for example, if you were to charge a fee in both scenarios for the areas in purple where above a connection fee, above and beyond the tap fee, you could use the proceeds from that to build this fund up, to be a revenue source over time for this fund. It's hard to predict how much that's going to be until it happens, but at least there's a logical connection for that. It's something for you to think about. So next slide, please. Next one, I'm sorry. And exceptions to this policy, we would assume that, like most counties, you're working hard to create economic development opportunities here for your citizens. And so when you get those big economic development projects, oftentimes they have incentive packages that you and the state put together to attract those businesses to come to the county. And that may include extending water and/or sewer to serve some of these developments. That would be exempt from your policy. And the second would be if the county is able to get grant funds or something, either from the state or from the federal government, to extend your systems, that would also be exempt from the policy, because it doesn't really have a financial, actually it helps everybody in the long run. Just want to make sure the thumbs up, that would be a consistency, going forward with that. So, the closing slide, next slide, is to get to your point about having Mr. Davis, this does get complicated. And, part of our scope of work was to do this early on in the process, because part of what we're doing with the master plan is we're looking at the whole county system, both water and wastewater, and what are going to be the needs long-term. Where do you extend lines? Where do you don't? Where you shouldn't? Those kinds of things to make good strategic, financially sound decisions. But part of that scope of work includes creating a capital improvement program for your utility system. Again, where you're going to need to be upsizing lines, investing in that system. So that's going to cost money. So once that CIP is created, the next step is what's the rate study? We look at the rates that need to be charged to support that CIP. And that's not just the rates that your monthly customers, that your customers pay monthly to the county, but also looking at all the fees associated with it, to looking at the whole picture. So what we'd like to suggest to you all today is don't make a final decision yet on these extension policy issues, because it's going to affect the rates in the end. It's better to look at the whole picture, we believe, rather than making a piecemeal decision until we see what the whole picture is. So that's what we would suggest to you all. But our scope of work originally said do the extension stuff, do the extension analysis on the front end, and we don't do the rate study part to the tail end. Part of our scope of work does have us working with your staff to work on rates for the upcoming fiscal year. That's more of a stopgap measure, but it's not going to be the long-term solution that'll come at the end of this when we present the full plan to you guys. That's our suggestion and recommendation to you all today. And I'm happy to try to answer your questions.
Mr. Chairman, I just have one question. Is it possible that we can get this slideshow so we can have those questions you've asked us tonight, so we can get home and contemplate the answers? It's a little hard, difficult to give you an answer right now. So
Oh, absolutely.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Great question. And staff has it, Chris has it, and we're happy to get it to you.
Mr. Chairman, ever since we've been on the board, Mr. Scares, Warren, and myself, and the other board members too, but especially when we took office, this water line has been something that's ran through our veins since we've been here. And so the way you painted it up to me, and I do like this, it's as an asset.
Right.
So I do like that. The question
It is an asset. It's often a forgotten asset because it's in the ground, but utility systems are expensive.
The question is how we're going to throttle it. That's the way I'm looking at it. But thank you, sir. Very good. I like the presentation. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Archer, when you were talking about the fund, establishing a fund to help with the offset of costs, I maybe missed it, or maybe we didn't get into that level of detail, but would there be a set of criteria as to how you get to use that fund, and that utilization of the fund would not be greater than X% of the total project cost? And, how do you develop the guidelines around that?
That's a great question, and the answer is yes. If the county's going to establish a fund, you've got to have some policies and criteria on how you use it, I believe. So again, so you don't have that
being subjective in the use of the policy and potentially creating a precedent that may not be a good one. So yes, establish the criteria, whatever the financial thresholds may need to be for the system, because it may be that, there are going to be scenarios where you may have a petition either by existing development or by new development, and they want the system extended, and it may not make financial sense in and of it by itself against the policy. And and that's a hard one to deal with, but sometimes that's the case. But again, we have to look at the policy, and once you have a policy in place, and particularly after you've used it for a while, and if you can get the fund where it's sustaining and growing by getting a current stream of revenue, if you dedicate, you can, for example, create this fund with some seed money that you have from your existing funds and fund balance, and then each year, build into your rate system. We're going to put X percentage or certain number of target dollars each year in that fund, and then have those criteria on how you actually use it. Then as that fund grows, it'll give you the greater ability to maybe serve areas that couldn't be served before. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and it is very complicated. I think it's important how you draw that box, but I certainly believe, for the benefit of the board members, the projects that you've talked about in the past that have been so expensive per household, $15,000, $17,000, whatever they were, this seems like a mechanism to help offset that. And what I've cautioned you previously, since we've had this facility or this authority under your direction, is let's not set a bad precedent, because there are plenty of places in this county money is our only object to running water lines, and we can burn it all very fast. Mm-hmm. So I think we've got to come up with the right level of participation, whether it's the fund cannot be used for more than 30% of total project cost, and it can only be used in areas that meet this criteria. I think we need to develop that before we jump headlong into new projects. So that would be my recommendation to the board, is along with some of the questions Mr. Davis asked, is, maybe at the retreat, staff comes with some of that criteria to spitball some progress in that area, so that we can provide feedback to Freeze and Nichols before they come back in a couple months with the final recommendation.
Mr. Chairman. Follow up on Mr. Smitherman. The only caveat I would say to that, Mr. Smitherman, is I think we probably should have two distinct criterias. One being from a want standpoint for a developer versus a need standpoint because of quality of water. I mean, we've got some obligation to our citizens that have water issues that, I'm just saying, as we go through the process, let's be sure we think about
a developer's criteria and a need-based criteria.
Correct.
Mr. Chairman, I prefer the need basis myself. That drives the cost down, in my opinion. So, anyway. But you're looking, let me get that right. You're talking about both?
Yeah.
I agree with the criteria that he's saying, because you don't want to go, as the council would say, carte blanche with whatever you got from an asset. I understand that. I agree, that's good management of monies for the citizens as well. But my question is to you on that one, though. I like, if you don't mind my asking, I don't know what it is. There's something about this water and him today for some reason. Mr. Adcock got it going, I guess, with that haircut of his. But, I want to know why you say the want and the need. Give me an idea.
Well, I mean, I think you have some developers that'll go out there on a want basis with an idea of, I want to develop this land because I want to build houses and I want to make a bunch of money, or I want to put a particular strip center in or something. I want some assistance with the water and getting paybacks because they go through the purple areas.
Right.
So I think that's a want need. versus someone that lives in an area where the water becomes contaminated or, you know, the water supply dries up from a well standpoint, and they're sitting out there on property without water or a limited amount of water. And we're gonna, you know, that's a need base.
You're right.
So we don't need to hang those citizens out
Right.
in the same category as someone that's in it to have capital gains. That's my only thought. I mean, you know.
Any other questions that I can help you with? All right. Thank you so much for your attention and your questions and suggestions.
All right, thank you, sir. New business, list bill approval.
I'm going to take this one, and this is the only time you'll see this particular item under new business, but I did want to explain. In the future, it will be under consent agenda. Your bill list that you will approve at tonight's meeting, at the full board meeting, has the service authority checks that we have written on their behalf in it as well. So really, there's only one bill list. It's very hard to separate that out. So I just wanted to make that as a matter of explanation to you all. If anybody clicked on that link, it will take you, and there are 4 folders typically, because usually there are 4 weeks in the month. We write checks every single week. So each week, if you click on that folder, it will bring up that week's worth of checks. So that's why you will see folders out there as opposed to this massive list. There's actually 4 lists. So we are doing this because it was a requirement of our auditors that you all be able to see what we are expending and just take a look at it just for transparency reasons. That bill list has always been online for anybody that wants to see that, whether it's one of your constituents or you yourselves. You know, it's there for anybody that might be interested in how we spend our money. And they can actually call us if they have questions. So that's never gone away, but it just wasn't out there for you all to just click on to make that effort to go out there and look. So we don't have that ability with this agenda to be able to give you that link because it's paper right now. I mean, that may change in the future. But just know that each meeting that you have for the full board, you're going to see all of our expenditures, which do include the service authority expenditures. So I did want to explain that to you all tonight. Any questions about the bill list?
Thank you, ma'am. EDA Public Works Funding Application Discussion.
Chris.
Yes, sir. When we came last month with the discussion on the EDA Public Works funding application, I know there was some reservation in the amount of money that we were looking at these projects and the anticipated 50% participation level for the county. So I wanted to give some explanation as to how that came about before I go into what we have decided to present to you. When we first met with the engineers and we were told there was some possible coronavirus relief funds available, we basically threw the kitchen sink at them. We said, let's put all of this in there because we thought maybe it would be 100% financing. After the projects were evaluated, they came back and said, a lot of these don't meet the requirements for the coronavirus relief because they don't have any link, strong link to the pandemic. So after they whittled them down, they said, well, this is a better funding mechanism, is the Public Works funding mechanism, which requires a 50% match. So we took the top 5, as I explained, the top 5 highest criticality rating pump stations, and we combined that with another project, the Brockway Sewer Extension, that we had already begun working on prior to the board changeover. And that's how we came up with that amount. And it kind of got ahead of us before we realized how much that was. But I wanted to at least present that because it is 50% funding. And that's sometimes that's hard to turn down, but it is a big bite of our reserves. So after discussion with administration, we decided to present to you the recommendation that we go with the Brockway Sewer Pump Station, a gravity extension part of that. And Kevin, if you can pull that map up for me. It's the one January. So what this one is the Brockway Sewer Pump Station that is in front of OI Glass is our oldest pump station. And so when we started evaluating that pump station, as you can see, that is at the top of the top of that drawing. When we started evaluating that, we looked at a project that we were made aware of that was going to serve Lot 11, which is currently owned by RIFA. It was called a Project Tire, and they had a proposal to do a gravity extension to serve that lot. Well, we're looking at it further. We said, well, that extension could also serve Brockway, and we could do away with that existing pump station. So if you could click, Kevin, you can click one. So what we're proposing, and this project is click one more time. So we would follow that creek up right there, the green proposed sewer, and we would get gravity service up to Brockway. And one more click, Kevin, if you would. Two more clicks. And then we would also extend the other gravity line up to the existing force main that is coming from our Ringgold East Industrial Park pump station, which serves Axor and will also serve the lot that's across the street from Axor, that is a potential development lot. So that would allow us to do away with an existing pump station and also a force main that goes up Barker Road and down Wilkerson Road into the existing pump station. So that project is estimated at $484,000, and additional costs are construction, administration, and inspection, a couple of plats for easements when we cross the Brockway property, and some permitting costs of about $30,000. The benefit is that we've done about 80% of the engineering already, and that's already been paid for. That was done previously before the changeover of the board. So that project, 484, we're looking at probably, about 530, 525 total project cost. And so the more manageable 250, 270,000, 50% match. So if that is digestible to the board, we will go ahead and proceed with making that application to the EDA for that. And I'll take any particular questions on that.
How long is the payback? How long is the payback on?
How long what?
How long will it take for us to recoup?
Payback, recoup your money.
I did that number, and I'm sorry I didn't have it in front of me, but Richard, you don't remember what that number was that I sent you, do you? I could get that to you. It's a pretty strong payback because of the amount of usage that Brockway has and the revenue we make off of their sewer.
Okay. Do you remember what that number is, Mr. Smithman?
I do not.
I don't think I shared it with David. I want to say that their sewer bill is about $20,000 a month. Then you have to take out our treatment costs out of that. And I was thinking it was 5 to 7 year payback, something like that.
Okay.
But I can certainly email that to you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
If you would, just send that to Kaylin.
Okay.
And we'll get it to everybody at the end of the week.
When you do, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. When you do your upgrades and increase, I see your pipes, some of them 16 inch, some of them 6, 8. What's the longevity of the line as far as how long do they last? Does it depend?
Yeah, PVC, you mean just capacity wise?
Yes.
That really depends on what, you look at this situation, there's not a lot above that. So, that, we would take some of that into consideration.
Okay.
But it depends on what, I think you have to just take a look at the properties that are potentially could developed
Sure.
around it, and then make basically an educated guess.
Yeah.
But sometimes they get used up fast. Sometimes, I mean, we probably, with our Fall Creek outfall that we built, 20 years ago, we're probably still 20% capacity of that, just because has been not a influx of residential development in the 41 area that would use that up.
Reason I'm asking the question, because, we're looking at when will we get our money back? And then beyond to see, the longevity. And so that's what I'm asking.
So the cost analysis that I did on the payback would just take into consideration Brockway only. Now, if you start looking at the potential that if we do get a development in Lot 11, and then maybe another development in the track that's just south of Brockway,
Oh, yeah.
that's going to speed that up.
It's going to speed the
Yeah.
payback quicker. Yep.
We didn't, you didn't include Axor in the payback? Because I thought I heard you say Axor would be on this line too.
They, the Axor kind of falls back to that, to the pump station. So it really, I guess it would be of some benefit, but it kind of is, it's already been an existing.
Okay, how about the lot across the road from Axor that's
Oh, that would
developed?
be, yeah, that would be a tremendous
Okay,
increase too.
which would reduce our number.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Good
Mr.
job.
Chairman,
Thank you.
Mr. Adcock, when do you need a decision? Is this a today vote we're going to do, or is there a time limit on your application?
We need the resolution, so if we can get just a verbal approval at some point prior to the next meeting, then we can develop the resolution, is that correct?
Right, the EDA requires this board to adopt a resolution. We just need consensus. We'll place an affirmative resolution on our next meeting. If that work for you, then you can vote it up or down. And at that time, you'll arm them with all the payback numbers and everything, so they can be educated and make the correct decision.
Sounds.
Okay, good.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I'm known to stay in the galaxy of what they call perpetual perfidy. With that in mind, I want to ask you one question, and I know it's going to be a long shot, but you know me. You know me. How well do you know those that are at Brockway, say the plant manager and anybody else that's, say, up the ladder with that particular operation? Do you know them well? Do you talk to them?
I do not. I've met the maintenance manager there, and I have talked to their global property manager about the idea of just crossing the property to access to get to it. And but he's in Cleveland or somewhere else, but I guess he's actually in Illinois somewhere.
Would it be a long shot because of, they do have tax write-offs and all? Would they be so kind to say, help us put a little small donation to our efforts to keep them viable? I mean, just the way you would dress that up. I'm just asking them, you never know. It'd be nice if they could put up, say, $20,000 or $50,000. I'm just saying, could that possibly happen or be a consideration, Business is business.
Right. Just, what we're looking at basically is, and that's another cost consideration, is being able to get rid of that sewer pump station. Because if we have to end up, rebuilding it, which is basically what we need to do, it's going to be probably $250,000, $300,000, and then we have the ongoing electricity maintenance and everything else associated with the pump station. So we're looking at kind of this versus that, and the gravity line is a much more attractive solution. So so it's really not giving them that much of a better service than they're getting now. But if I think we've reached out to them to support the grant or to support the application for the grant. I don't know if we've been successful for that, but Axel or some of the other ones have been successful. So if we can get that kind of support, that's pretty strong.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Are they being reasonable about, I heard you mention something about the easement across Brockway's property. Are we paying for that, or are they?
We haven't got that far into the discussion yet. My initial talks were, will you be acceptable to that? And it was basically, I think, I don't see why we wouldn't be acceptable to it.
To Mr. Davis's point, that could be, something that if they would just give the easement,
Yeah,
and some kind of grant it to the county and
Yeah, I think
as
we
a
can,
write-off or something instead of us paying for it.
yeah, that's what I'm looking for. I mean, I think they could come to the table because they've been here for so long, they've been viable so long, and I know they got money. And they could write this whole thing if they wanted to, which I'm not asking them, but I'm just saying just a little bit of cost sharing,
Sure,
being a
we'll-
good neighbor. That's all I'm saying.
we'll make that request, and we've kind of gotten
I was just asking.
Economic Development's office involved to try to help the contacts and all that, but we'll certainly make that request.
Even
that,
if, okay.
that it's going to benefit the property. The building behind Brockway is a separate, separate business, so we could actually pick that one up too. I'm not sure exactly how the routing goes with that, but I anticipate we pick that up too, and that's another thing we could consider.
Good thinking.
Don't we have some, I know there's small businesses that are across the road from Brockway. Are we going to try to pick any of those up?
I think they're a little bit further up the hill.
Okay.
So I'd have to check to see that.
You're looking for gravity. You're looking for gravity.
True
You got the
that.
concrete, you got the concrete places there, and I'm not mistaken. You got another business up there that's in a shell building, or in a building, I do know that.
And they're water users. They're just not real, I don't think they're real huge, either one. Your
Yeah.
concrete plant is a good water user, but it's not, it's just got bathrooms for the employees is all it's got on the sewer side of it. So if there is some up there, we'll take a look and see if it might be beneficial to pick them up. Anything else? Thank you.
I was just gonna make one point. If you do nothing, Brockway's still gonna pay their bill. So I don't think you use that money, when you calculate what your, payback is. I think you look at the cost of the electricity that you're using at the pump station, future maintenance cost of that pump station, and maybe you can pick up additional sewer in the future off these additional lots, but you're gonna get that cash anyway, so I don't think you use that in your, payback calculation.
Which is just going to extend the time out, but, obviously, we'd love to get to a gravity feed versus pump stations.
That's right.
I'll send out the cost of the, I can still supply you with the amount of revenue that we're getting, Brockway, just for your information, but I'll send out the anticipated cost of replacing that pump station like it is now. And you can kind of see what, a little bit of additional we're looking at that would go ahead and take care of the gravity, getting it to lot 11. So that would make lot 11 a lot more valuable from, once we add sewer to it.
Makes sense.
Because nobody's going to help us with the maintenance and fixing the pump station, correct?
Correct.
But they will help us if we run this new line with gravity feed.
Well, we could submit either one, but just as an engineer, I'd much rather have gravity sewer.
Okay.
And it's benefiting by picking up that lot 11, which, to get lot 11 over to the existing gravity, we'd have to have another pump station to get it up to Brockway, and then to get back to that pump station. So you're looking at double pumping, and so just as an engineer, I think gravity sewer is the way to go.
Thank you, Chris.
All right. Are there any matters from the authority members?
No, sir, I'm good.
All right, hearing none, we are now going to adjourn from the Pittsylvania County Service Authority regular meeting.